Russell, would you care to say a few words before we get started here?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ron. Um, I sat in on Bill's clinic in Long Beach last year, which I bet a couple of you in the room did also. I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. So give a welcome to Bill Brown, all the way from frozen Syracuse, New York. So, Bill, they're all yours.
Well, thank you. Just want to make sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Yes.
All
You're
right,
good, Bill.
super.
Thank you.
All right. We're here in Syracuse, New York, where it's snowing like crazy right now. We're supposed to get about a foot today. So be happy that you're in Louisville right now. I, Before I start the presentation, I want to mention that, you know, I've met quite a few folks from your area over the years, uh, some of them at national conventions that I had a part in. And last summer, I had the opportunity to be in Louisville at the end of the summer. And if you remember, when I was there, the remnants of a hurricane came through and it rained like crazy for a couple of days. And everything that I was there for that had nothing to do with model railroading was canceled. And I just stumbled upon, there was a train show that you guys had that day. I went to that train show. I did not expect to do anything related to model railroading that weekend. And then I ran into some folks, Russ and Bruce Sanders, people who opened up their home to me. And I found out something in Louisville that I already knew, and that the best thing in my mind about being a member of the NMRA and being involved in this great hobby is not the trains, but it's the people. And so I just want to thank the people there that opened up their homes to me and the hospitality that I had while I was in town. It was just fantastic. So anyway, I've got a business of my own called LARC Products. Again, Bill Brown, that's my website right there. You might want to take a picture of it or whatever, if it's something that I'm going to say today that might interest you. This is the display that I have when I'm at train shows that I set up a few times a year. So you may have seen it in the past. And I deal with two products. I've got what I call my railroad graphics, which for a number of years were CDs and DVDs. Now I offer them on flash drives as well because obviously there are newer computers that just don't have the CD DV drives anymore. They just have the USB flash drive. So I offer it that way now. I also, since I retired from my full-time job about 10 years ago as a school district administrator, I had time to dabble into the creating full-time or full custom backdrops. And I do that now, and that part has really taken over and taken off. And I'm doing projects for people all over the world right now. Uh, if you've been involved with me in the past, this is what the discs, the CDs look like. We're now up to 8 volumes. I started, and it's kind of an interesting story. 20 years ago, I was building my own home layout, and I've always had a real interest in photography, taking a lot of landscape pictures. And on my own model railroad, I was trying to paint my backdrops and quite honestly realized quickly that I was very bad at it. So I tried to see if I could develop some photo backdrops out of some of the landscapes that I had taken over the years. And I developed a process where I could take a big landscape picture and divide it into sections that could easily be printed just by pressing print and print it section by section on anybody's home printer and put them together to create a beautiful backdrop. So I did this for my home layout, and some of my friends saw it and said, "Wow, that's pretty cool what you've done. Why don't you try it for our modular layout?" And we had a big modular layout that we took to shows. I was in a club. So I did them for the modular layout. And the first time we went to you mentioned before, the Springfield train show, the Amherst show in Massachusetts, we had been going to the show with our modular layout for years. The first time that we took the layout there with backdrops, people couldn't believe it. They thought it was a new layout, the way it added depth and everything to it. So a friend of mine who was the president at the time said, you know, you might have something here that you could market that people might be interested in. Well, the first year after that, I put maybe a dozen or so of these landscapes that I had developed and sectioned off. I put them on a CD and I took them to this Amherst show. And I think I had like maybe 25 of them with me. And I put them on the edge of the table next to our layout with just a little sign that said what they were and a coffee can. And I think I was charging $10 for the CD or something, and people would just throw the money and take one. And after about the first hour of the show, they were all gone. And there was almost the right amount of money in the coffee can, almost. So, hey, maybe I do have something here. So by the second year, I probably made 50 of them. I raised the price to $15. And again, an hour into the show, they were all gone. So by the third year, I figured, well, maybe I really do have something here. I went to our county here and I got a tax ID number. I registered as a business, and now 20 years later, we've got 8 of these CDs now. And I got to honestly tell you that as a master model railroader myself, there isn't a modeling project that I do anymore where I don't use something off these graphic discs. And what I try to do, everything that I do and I create, I try to figure out a way to put them on the discs so other people can use them. So I'm going to show you what it's all about, and some of you might be interested. This is the newest volume 8. And this shows you all the different things that are on there. Again, it started with backdrops, but again, I've branched out to just a ton of other things that I think people can use. As I said, there are 8 volumes. We started out what became volume number 1, and then 2 or 3 years later, I had enough new material to put a second one out, and then 2 or 3 years later, a third one, and now after 20 years, there are 8 volumes, and there are absolutely no repeats of any material in any of them. They're all new material and all different material. And you can see the list. I won't read it because I'm going to show you a lot of these things. These are the kinds of things that you can do with the discs. First of all, let's talk about backdrops. That's the way it all started. Some of you might be familiar with a gentleman that's a contributing editor to Model Railroader magazine, Lou Sassy. Lou is a good friend of mine. I met him years ago, and this is a backdrop from his layout down in Raleigh, North Carolina right now that he sent me the pictures after he put the backdrop up. Here's another one. This is a friend of mine right here in Syracuse. But if you look, you can see that you can see where my cursor is. This line of bushes is the edge of the layout, and this is all photo backdrop behind that were done off of the graphic discs. And again, I'll go through some of these. Again, just some beautiful backdrops that add depth to people's layouts. Everybody that does things with my discs, I try to tell them to send me some pictures so I can put them on the website or I can use them in presentations, but you can see there's some amazing things. If you go on the website and you look at the discs, they're all previewed there. Right now, there are over 2,000 choices of backdrops on those 8 volumes that I've done over 20 years. If you open up one of the discs, you put it in your computer, there are preview pages, and this is what one of them looks like, which shows all the different scenes that are on that particular disc. You can see you got a scene, it's got a title, and then it tells you how many parts it is and how big it is after you print it all out. Again, let's say I want to choose the second one down there. I take the name of it. I go to the listing. I double click on it. The whole thing comes up. I press print, and now it starts coming out in pages. And I'll show you how the whole process works. Here's one of the pages printed. And again, some of these backdrops are as much as 20 pages long. You can print just a small portion of it if you have a small area to do, or you can print the whole thing. So this is the way they come out of your printer. Again, I made this product so anybody with any home printer, any home computer can use this without going to a print studio or a print shop. You can all do it all at home. It's a very inexpensive and flexible process to use. So again, that's the way it comes out. You can see I've got the pages stacked up here, and what you're going to have is everything that you print, you've got a white area around the outside. If you have a paper cutter or a metal ruler with a hobby knife, you can cut that white edge off. And then generally what people do is they cut along the tree line or along the horizon line, so you can use your own painted sky behind it with a lot bigger sky than you can get out of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. This is a project here that you can see. The scenery is in place, the track is in place, but now we're going to look at taking this background and fill it with one of these backdrops. There you can see it's printed out. That backdrop there is probably about 8 or 9 pages. And there are 2 different ways that people can put this together. You can put page by page up and put them. What I do is put them face down on some newspaper and paint the back with Elmer's glue straight out of the bottle. Again, it's a very cheap process to do. You paint it on the back, put it in place, paint the next one, put it in, and then you have a little wiggle time to get the seam nice and tight. So that's one way you can do it. Other ways you can do it is you can take all of these, put them face down on your workbench, put them together, and tape the back seam, making one big long backdrop that you can put in one piece. So this shows you without the scenery done and after the scenery is put in place in front, and you can see how it looks. Now, I see a lot of people at train shows and they'll look at the product and they'll tell me, well, I'm not to that point yet because I'm just doing my track work or I'm just doing my bench work. And my answer to them is, you're not far away from needing something like this, because if you have in your mind what the scene wants to be when you're done, it's a lot easier to put the backdrop in place first, and then you can match the colors from the backdrop as you move forward with your foliage and your trees and everything to give you a really seamless look. Here's another project. You can see that the wall has been painted blue with sky blue, and I've painted in some distant mountains. And all I did there is I just took a little cup full of that blue paint and I put a few drops of either gray or brown in it, mixed it up, and then just did this distant hill. Here you can see I've printed out the backdrop itself that's going in place. You can see there's a seam right next to my thumb. There's a seam over on this side, on the left side as well. I've taken this and put it face down and taped the back seams to make the print itself. And now you can see what it looks like when it's in place behind the scenery. You can see those distant hills behind just to give it some depth. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples now of backdrops that people have sent me with this home printer method. It's pretty hard to tell where the actual modeling ends and where the backdrop begins. Here's another one. I can tell you that the chute right here is actual modeling. The building to the right is actual modeling. This pile on the left and the phone pole, that's actual modeling, and the loader, but everything behind that you see is on that hardboard behind. Here's another one. I'll go through some of these fairly quickly now. This gentleman used to live up here in the Northeast. Now he's moved to Florida and he's torn this layout down, but I think this is pretty cool. When I visited his layout, it was a shelf layout that's only about a foot deep. And if you look right behind that yellow automobile, you can see the edge of the layout where the road matches up with the backdrop, and all of the house, the trees and everything are on the backdrop, and it gives it a heck of a lot more depth. Here's another one, same gentleman, same layout. The actual piece of rolling stock is modeled. This building to the right is modeled, and you can see a bush line here and everything behind there is photo backdrop. This one I think I showed you earlier. Again, this bush line here is the edge of the layout, and the rest is on the photo backdrop. Again, here the bench work's done. He's got a good idea of what his scene wants to look like. So he's put his backdrop up first, and now it's easier to put the scene in place. Those of you that already have your scene, your layouts fairly finished and want to fill in behind, probably the method of turning it over on your workbench and taping the seams together from behind and then putting it up in one piece, you can slide it down behind, might be the best way to do it. But again, bench work is going up, but the backdrop's in place here first. All right, so again, after we did the backdrops, then all right, what other things can go on these discs that people might be able to use? And I love to photograph very interesting buildings from all different angles. There are over 1,500 choice on these 8 volumes of background buildings, and they're all single pages. I forgot to mention before that everything is resizable for any scale. These background buildings are in a Microsoft Word document. And if you're familiar with Word, when you bring this up on your screen, you click on the document, and then you can drag the corner to make it as big or as small as you need before you press print. And you can see there's a ruler on the top, there's a ruler on the side too that I don't have on this particular screen, but there is. And again, everything is resizable for any scale, including the backdrops that I went through before. Here you can see a project, painted the wall behind. I've done some clouds just with a typical, kind of way we would do clouds. I did some distant hills behind, and now you can see these buildings are just cutouts that I've printed. This background here, this bunch, this city skyline is a single print, another one over here, and then you can see when the scenery goes in front of it, what it looks like. All of those buildings along the back wall are paper cutouts that are glued to the back wall. This one's kind of an interesting one, and again, it's very, very hard to tell where the modeling ends and where the backdrop begins. This is a whole bunch of different prints stacked on top of each other. First, the background taller buildings. This factory is actually a background building, a paper cutout. And the trucks are real. This particular building is real, and the wall is real. The fence is real, but that's all photo backdrop behind it. Here's another one of a customer. He just sent me this a couple weeks ago, and I added it to this presentation. You can see the buildings along his back wall. And there's some 3D 1-inch thick buildings here, which we're going to get to in a minute, because that's something I added on the latest volumes, volume 7 and 8, the ability to do those. Again, some real buildings here, modeled buildings, and then just a paper cutout to kind of bridge the gap between those two buildings. Same deal here. All of those factories are on the backdrop. Factory back here is on the backdrop. These trees are modeled, and some of these that you see sticking over the tops of the trees behind, again, they're paper cutouts. All right, so what other things did I get into then? Every one of the 8 discs has a ton of backdrops on them. Every one has a ton of background buildings. So I try to do some different things in addition on every one of the volumes to make them unique besides the backdrops and the background buildings. How about painted brick sides? I love to find these buildings and take pictures of the sides of the buildings. Here I took this picture, I squared it off in Photoshop, and there you can see it applied to the side of a building that I modeled. I don't know about you folks, but I could not paint something that looks as realistic as the side of these buildings. Again, this is a photo, and what you do is you bring it up on the screen of your computer. You've already measured the side of your structure that you want to apply it to. You click on the image and you make that image exactly the size that you need for the side of your building. Press print, glue it onto the side of your building, and there you go. And again, I think I'm a pretty good modeler, but I would have a lot of trouble painting something that looks that realistic. So this is just a great method to use. Here are some others. This is the way they look like when you bring them up on your computer screen. This is a page. There are multiple images on one page. And again, they're all resizable. They're all individual images. So what I would do, and there's full instructions for everything I'm talking about on every one of these discs. Let's say I wanted to use the one in the upper left-hand corner. I can click on it. It gets highlighted. I can do your typical copying, which on a PC computer is Control C. On a Mac, I believe it's Open Apple C. And then open up a brand new Word document and Control V to paste it in like you would any document. Again, full instructions are there, and now I can work with each image individually. I can make it exactly the size I need for the side of my structure and then print it. One thing I'll mention here now is people ask me what kind of paper do I use. If you're familiar with your regular typing paper is 20-pound paper. What I recommend is to use 60-pound cardstock. You can buy it at any Office Max, Staples, any of those places, and it goes through any printer just fine. But when you paint your glue onto the back of it, it won't ripple. And so I think that's the best thing to use for this. And it's not very expensive. People ask me, should I use photo paper? My answer is absolutely not. Too expensive and too shiny. You want a dull finish, and that's what this 60-pound cardstock will give you. All right, I went into on some of these discs of doors, taking pictures of all kinds of overhead doors with some detail to them. Here you can see one. I've taken the picture. I take it into Photoshop. I square them off to be able to put them on the discs. There it is, squared off. And now you can see it's applied to the side of this building. Put it on a piece of cardstock or whatever and put it behind the opening to give you a really detailed looking door. How about signage? Every one of these CDs has thousands of signs on it. And you know, signs really bring your layout to life. All your buildings having multiple signs, billboards. This particular one here, I printed on tissue paper. Just a various technique that I think a lot of you are probably familiar with, and then applied it with white glue to the side of the building so it looks like it conforms to the brick. Every building should have a name, especially if you're doing operations and you have sidings where you're backing boxcars onto a siding, so people know where they're going. Obviously, all your structures need to have names. Hundreds of billboards, and all the signage billboards are from all different eras. There are road signs. There are all just everything you can imagine. Here I've populated a storefront sign. This is a sign shop where I just populated with a whole bunch of signs. This is the way it comes off on your computer. You bring it up on your screen. Again, every one of these is an individual image. So you can either take the individual image and work with it to expand it as big as you want or contract it, or you can just print the whole sheet and cut them out and use them as they come on the sheet. There's probably 15 or so pages of these on each of the discs. And again, all unique, no repetition on any of them, in all different eras, old style from the, back in the early 1900s to modern day. So then I got into probably, I'm going to say volume 4 or 5 forward. Every one of them now has what I call window and door dressings, where I take pictures of what's in a window and I stack them all on these CDs. And as I'm making a structure, you can cut it out and put it behind your acetate to make it look like something's going on inside that building. All right, another thing I got into is then called street and waterway extensions. You know, you have a backdrop already on your layout and you have a street that runs into that backdrop, or you have a river that runs into that backdrop. Well, you want to have a way to extend your street back into your backdrop. So here is a typical picture that I took, and here you see it applied in between two buildings to make my road go off into the distance. I have it for rivers. Here's another one for a road. If you look right behind these vehicles, you'll see the edge of the actual layout. And now this is all on the photo. The structure on the left here is actually on the layout. It's a modeled building, but you can see how I've extended that road right off into the distance. Here's another one, again, right in front of these vehicles is the edge of the layout, and the trees to the right. This hill is for real. This structure is for real. This tree is for real. But again, it's just a cutout that makes my road go off into the distance, so it just doesn't end. I also got into then brick block and stone sheets. Some of you probably remember years ago a company called Paper Creek that put a lot of these things out, and I think they went bankrupt or they stopped producing them because I think a lot of people would buy one and then put them in their copy machine and just copy them all, and they wouldn't sell anymore. Well, I did not copy anything from Paper Creek. I just want to use that as an example. But here is a cement wall with a lot of weathering on it. And you can see where some pipes come out of the bottom. And again, as a modeler, I don't know if I'd be able to weather something that realistic. Here you can see it's a paper cutout wrapped around a 2x4 for a bridge support, which gives a great look of weathering running down it. Again, here's another one. This is a paper insert that's just glued to the background, and then the scenery done around it, structures done around it. I drilled some holes, put the pipes in, and put some acetate to make it look like water was flowing. See, again, a wall that some of you might be talented enough to paint that. I'm not. All right, then I got into building interiors. I go everywhere with my camera, and when I find a structure that I really like the interior, I take pictures. I have factories, I have engine houses, I have old style bars and restaurants. I have old hotels and modern bedrooms and bathrooms and all kinds of different things on these. And again, here you can see it's just a paper cutout glued an inch or two behind the window to give the impression that something's going on inside that building. How about roofing sheets? Got into this as well. I take a picture of an actual roof. I square it off in Photoshop to make it uniform. And there are tons of these on various ones of these discs as well. And again, if you are going to make a contest quality model that you're going to enter in a contest, this might not be for you. But a lot of us are satisfied with a structure that's a couple feet back on my layout. I'm never going to enter it in a contest or anything where I should be doing the shingles shingle by shingle. So a paper cutout might work for you. Here is a tarp put over the top with some lath to give the impression that, they had a leaky roof that they were trying to fix very cheaply. Here's a metal roof with rust running down it. Various roofs, all kinds of different roofs that you can imagine. And again, these are one-piece paper cutouts that you apply and cut the edges away to give you a really nice look of a roof. How about, you can see on the left are some of those window dressings that I talked about. There are a bunch of sheets of curtains where you can cut out the curtain and cover the inside of your window. Stained glass windows you can see on the right here. Pick yourself up from an office store, some of the teachers' acetate that goes through your printer. You can get them for inkjet printers. You can get them for any different kind of printer where you can print onto the clear acetate. And now you've got stained glass windows to put in some of your old style houses or your churches or something like that. Later on, after about, maybe I'm going to say 5 or 6 discs, I got the idea that I was doing all of these backdrops horizontally, where they print off section by section horizontally, and a lot of people wanted some tall buildings. So now I got into some vertical skyscrapers, where now your pages come out vertically. So you would stack them vertically, 3 or 4 pages high, to give yourself some real height in some of the skyscrapers. And some of the people in the larger scales, the S scales, the O scales, who want to do some backgrounds like this, be very productive for them. All right, I got into, on volume 7 and volume 8, I wanted some 3D background structures. So I came out with this method of taking the side of a building, and after it's printed, this particular one is an N scale, and the instructions tell you exactly where to fold it on the lines here, and then reinforce the back to give you anywhere from a 1/2 inch to a 1 inch thick background building. There are 5 different scales of these, from Z all the way up to O scale. And obviously the O scale is 3 or 4 different pages that you would print, cut them out, tape the seams together behind, bend the corners 90 degrees, bend the roof down to give you your background building. And here you can see there's about a 1 inch thick building here. After I printed it off, I put the awning on it out of my box in order to just give it something a little bit extra. Here's another about a 1/2 inch thick building here. And on the background, you can see those are paper cutouts that are glued right to the background. So now it gives me depth with the real buildings, some 1/2 inch to 1 inch background buildings, and then of course the paper cutouts that are put right on to the backboard. Here you can see here a bunch of these background buildings behind. It's not a really good picture. This is an actual structure, but these are all background buildings, some right on the background and some that are about 1 inch thick. All right, how about loads for your cars? Here is a paper wrap to make a container for your well cars. Those of you that model modern railroads with stacked trains, and maybe you have a port scene with 30 or 40 of these containers, you know that if you're buying them plastic in HO scale, I know they're like about 2 for $29. This way, you print it off, and you see the copy on the top here tells you exactly how big of a block of wood to mill in order to wrap this around it that fits into your well cars. You can use a block of wood. You can use your 1 or 2 inch foam insulation that makes it a little bit lighter. But there you can see a couple of containers in a well car that have been made with this particular method. And these are on the last 2 of those CDs, volume 7 and volume 8. There's probably 10 or 12 different kinds, and in all different scales. All right, how about lumber car loads? There you can see a paper cutout with the top of a lumber load and the side of a lumber load. And there you can see it, again, glued around a block of wood and applied to a flat car to give us a really nice lumber load. Graffiti sheets. Quite a few of the CDs have graffiti sheets, and you can either print them on paper, cut them out, and apply them directly from paper, or there are a number of manufacturers out there that make decal sheets where you can run them through your printer and print them right on a decal sheet where you can apply them as decals. And there you can see it applied to the side of a well car here with one of the containers or a couple of the containers put inside. I've got on a couple of those CDs newspaper clutter. One day our Syracuse newspaper here, for some anniversary or whatever, printed a cover page of about 30 small shots of their most famous covers of newspapers from all kinds of different events, World War II, bombing of this and whatever. And I took that, got permission from the newspaper. I shrunk them down and put them on the CD in 5 different scales. So now you can print it, cut it out, crumble it up a little bit, throw it on your sidewalk with a little bit of glue, and just gives you something of interest. Newspaper clutter on your sidewalks. All right, now we just talked about all of the things that are on these discs. And I also mentioned earlier that after doing those for 10 years, I retired. I got into the process of creating custom one-piece backdrops for people. And I've been doing this now for 10 years, and quite honestly, I am very busy with it right now. At any given time, I'm working about 7 or 8 projects for people all over the world, where they'll go to my website and they'll pick a scene. They might pick 4 or 5 scenes. I size them exactly the way they want it. They tell me I want it 128 inches long and 14 inches high. I size it exactly. They might tell me that I want a different sky. They might tell me that that scene is too modern. Can you take those vehicles out of it? And I go into Photoshop and I do it. It's full backdrop creation where we create for people exactly what they want. They might pick out 3 or 4 scenes that we blend together. There's over 5,000 images on the LARC Products website in all different categories, all parts of the country, Canada, Mexico. And actually, folks, next month, actually in May, my wife and I have a European trip planned where I plan to come back with a whole bunch of European pictures as well. There's all seasons, there's rolling mountains, there's high peaks, desert scenes, just everything industrial, rural, everything that you can imagine is there. This is what the backdrop library on my website looks like. You can see there's a ton of different categories. You click on the category and a scene comes up that shows you hundreds of scenes in each of one of those folders. You choose one, tell me the size you want it, and we create something for you. I have 3 different print materials that I work with. To describe them briefly, 2 of them are peel and stick, where you don't have to deal with any glues. You just peel the back off and you put it in place. People ask me, how big can I make these? The rolls of material that we use are 52 inches high and 99 feet long. So I can basically make any size one-piece backdrop that anybody needs. 2 of the materials are peel and stick. The Fabtex polyester is what I call foolproof or idiot-proof. You can crumble it up, you can straighten it out, it doesn't keep the folds, it's removable, it's repositionable. It's a fabulous material to work with. Image Bright vinyl is a very thin vinyl that you would put along your backdrop. Once you put it on, it's permanent. And then Pro 10.5 is a 10.5 mil thick vinyl that's not peel and stick. And that's the kind of material you would use if you've got some imperfections that you want to hide on your wall. Let's say you're putting it on a cinder block wall with a whole bunch of, the variations between the cinder blocks. Well, this will cover all that. You'll never see anything behind it. I want to show you a little bit of like an example of the projects I do for people. I have a gentleman that picked out this particular scene of this mountain with a mine on the side that was taken in Colorado. He loved the scene, but didn't like the sky. It was a cloudy day. I have on the website a folder full of maybe 30 or 40 different skies, some with lots of clouds, some angry clouds, some evening glow, whatever. So he picked out this particular sky, and then when I blend the 2 of them together, that's the backdrop he ended up with. Here's another project that I did for someone. He wanted a fall scene with some color. You can see the mountains, but he told me that he had a village already in front, that he wanted the village to be kind of extended into the backdrop. So I took another scene that he picked out, and you can see that I blended the 2 of them together to put that all those different structures onto the backdrop. And then, of course, he wanted a different sky. So here it is with the different sky. And there's the finished backdrop that he ended up with. Here's a whole bunch of examples of these one-piece backdrops that I've printed from my from our print shop. I work with a print studio. And again, I want to mention that it's not your typical print shop that we have here. It's a actual sign shop, that all of the things that we print are permanent. You can slop garbage on them and run it down it and clean it off with a cloth, because it's an actual sign shop where they make outdoor signs and the signs that you put on the side of vehicles to advertise your company, those kinds of things. So they really last for you. Here's a backdrop. The trestle is real. You've got some of the bushes here are real, but all this rock structure is real, is modeled, and the backdrop behind there it all takes it off into the distance. Here's another one. That's the Ophir Needles in central Colorado on the old Rio Grande Southern, actually taken in place from where that was. And this gentleman's modeling the Rio Grande Southern, so you can see the structures that are in place with the Ophir Needles behind it. Again, incredible modeling here of this gentleman. You can see the trees where my cursor is, they're all real. And the backdrop behind was actually taken in central Colorado up around Trout Lake on the Rio Grande Southern. Can you tell in this picture where the modeling ends and the backdrop begins? Well, I'll tell you, these bushes are all modeled. The structures here are modeled. And of course, the train in front is modeled. These structures are on the backdrop, and we made those about half size to force the perspective. They're only about 6 inches behind these buildings, but because they're smaller, it forces the perspective and makes it look like it's much further away. Here's another one. The tank is real, these bushes are real, but obviously that's the backdrop behind. The fence that you see across here is on the backdrop, and the cattle that are behind are on the backdrop. The ones here are modeled in the field. And this is actually on my layout, and I think we all have tongue-in-cheek nitpickers that come to our layout. A gentleman said to me one day when he looked at this, he said, how come you have dairy cows mixed with beef cattle? And I said, get out of here. Here's another scene. The structures are real. This is Ophir Loop on the Rio Grande Southern, and all of the actual backdrops that would be behind that scene if it still existed. We'll go through some of these a little bit quicker just to give you a flavor. This is one that I created for a gentleman just a few months ago, and he wanted this river that he was making to be extended in the backdrop, so we took the scene and we added this river and blended it right in. And I can't wait for him to scenic this to take a look at what the whole thing looks like when it's done. Again, another one. How about this one? Can you tell where the modeling ends? Well, I'll tell you, it's right behind this truck. And if you really look, you can see that this is the edge. The backdrop was put in place, and then the road was continued in the same colors. The fields, generally the same colors. Pretty cool look to it. Again, same deal here. Fantastic modeling there ahead of this backdrop that I created for this gentleman. If you're wondering about the online pricing of the discs that we talked about earlier, 8-volume set, the whole thing, you can see what it costs there. If you want volumes 1 through 5 now, from the first 10 years that I did this, are now on a DVD. They're all together on a compilation DVD. You can't buy those separately anymore. And volumes 6, 7, and 8 are still available separately at those prices. And if you're going to buy them on flash drive, you add $6 to it because you get the flash drive and you get to keep it. And I think you're an NMRA 100% member club, which is great. If you decide to come and order any of these things from us, mention that you're an NMRA member, and I'm a partner with the NMRA, so you get a 10% discount off of anything you order. LARCproducts.com is the website. My email is at the bottom, and full support. If you get something and you have questions later on, you email me, go back and forth. I can help you any way possible. So that's it, folks. That's the presentation that I have for you. It's been a great business for me. It started out as just a hobby, and now it's turned into, I wouldn't say a full-time job, but I really enjoy working with people to help create something that's really special for their model railroad.
Got a question. Hey, Bill,
Yes.
I went on your website this morning and your downloadable, mail form only goes to volume 7. Have you updated that?
That I have not updated the website yet. There is a volume 8 now, and the pricing on the website site only goes up to volume 7. And I can tell you, if you're interested in all 8, you just add $10. Add $10 to the volume 1 through 7 price, and we'll get it to you for just an additional $10. It's a long story why the website hasn't been updated. It hasn't been updated in a little while because the company that I worked with, that I created it for, about 1,000 hours worth of work to create it, has sold it to another company and discontinued the tool. So now I'm going to have to start over and take the whole website and transport it over to another method, which I just haven't had time to do yet. So if anybody goes on the website and they tell me they want to order 7 volumes, I send them a quick email saying for $10 more, if you'd like volume 8, I'll throw that in, and I do that.
Okay.
I've got a quick question. If you're looking, what I missed this because I had you at the restroom. What about custom stuff that you may not have? What's the procedure on that?
The procedure for what? I'm sorry.
Custom backdrops, like if you may not have a specific area that you're modeling, what's the procedure for that?
Well, you go on the website and pick out the scenes you want. If I don't have it, and I will tell you that what you can preview on the website, I probably have another 1,000 images that I've taken that are archived. So if you just describe what you want, I will send you a proof sheet of a whole bunch of different choices that you might want. But once you decide on an image or a set of images, there is a worksheet where you describe it to me exactly the size you want, the blending that you want. And then if I have questions, we'll go back and forth. When I have what you want, what I think is finished, I email you proofs. And you check out the proofs. You may want to make some changes. Once we agree on something, I also send a price quote. And then when we agree, I send you a PayPal request for funds. And you can either pay using PayPal or you can pay with a credit card by clicking on the PayPal link and choosing to pay with a credit card rather than PayPal. And you always can just mail a check. If that's the most convenient thing for you.
Well, Bill, is it better to print out on photo paper or matte paper, or does it make any difference?
No, you do not want to use photo paper. It's too expensive, too shiny. I recommend 60-pound cardstock for the ones that you're printing yourself on your own computer. You can paint the glue onto the back of it without it rippling, and it gives you a very flat, workable surface.
Have you ever used Mod Podge?
I'm sorry?
You ever used Mod Podge?
I have used Mod Podge for rivers and things like that. Not for the backdrop.
No?
I would say what I tell people to do is if you're using an inkjet printer, once you have your backdrop printed and installed, just take a very cheap matte spray. You might just anything that you can buy, a matte spray, and mist over it very lightly to seal the colors. And I have backdrops that I've used this method on my home layout that are 15, 18 years old and are still just as bright as ever.
Yeah, so Bill Russell here. So it matters not if you, or do you get better quality if you have a laser printer versus an inkjet?
I've used both and quality on both. When I was working uh, in my office at school, and shouldn't be telling this, but I would print some there, and it was what is called a phaser printer, which was a wax impression. I then, when I retired, I have a laser printer at home, and I've seen friends of mine that have printed them from inkjets, and everyone does similar quality. And again, it depends on the particular printer, but I don't think it matters the style of printer that you use.
Okay. And one more, you've been to the house, Stan White, who's live at the library there. And granted, we were putting it up, I have curve walls there, but we were putting up that, oh, I don't know, there were probably 3 by 2 or something like that. And once we had we used the 3M spray adhesive, but it was still pretty like a wet noodle. So my question is, uh, you were saying early in the presentation that you could cut it, take the different pages one by one and adhere those to your wall or whatever, or um, put it on something all at once and then put it up all at once. So do you find that, especially if you have a long, 3, 4 foot long backdrop, that if you're going to take the page by page and put it on something and then put it up to the wall, that it gets kind of scary or something, if you know what I mean?
Do if you're going to use the method where you put it face down on your workbench, tape the seams behind, and create a one-piece backdrop, there's a lot of different methods you can adhere that. I very successfully, people took a two-sided tape, a carpet tape, and just ran it along the back top edge, just half an inch under the top edge, and then slip it behind your scenery, and then push it to stick the top in place, and it works just fine. I've seen people use glue. I'm going to be honest that the spray glues that you mentioned, like the 3M spray glues, I found that they work for a little while, but many people have a basement that might have, a humidity problem or whatever. And I found that the spray glues might separate over time, and they might come down from your wall. I've just found the best method if you're putting them up one page at a time, as I mentioned before, Elmer's glue. It dries permanent. Once it dries, it will not come off. It's easily cleaned up, and you get a little wiggle time where you can put it on, get it exactly where you want it, and then put the next one on, press the seams together. You got a little wiggle room before it dries. So, and again, I designed this method to be inexpensive. And what's more inexpensive than 60-pound paper and Elmer's glue?
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Well, I have found that not the whole thing coming down, but just certain edges are starting to peel off, and then yeah, that's how I remedy it with a little white glue, and all's well again. So
Very good.
Question, Bill, if you worked at a school, there'd be plenty of Elmer's glue available, wouldn't there?
Yes, there would, especially in elementary school where I started my career.
Hey, Bill, what do you suggest mount, if you can't go on mounting walls, what do you suggest mounting them to, foam core board or poster board?
On my layout and a lot of layouts, I use 1/8 inch masonite. And because I wanted to wrap it around, cove around the corners, sometimes you'll have, it's not completely flat where you want to go around things. 1-inch masonite wraps around anything very easily. And then where the seams are, just another little tip, I found a product called Durham's Rock Hard. You may be familiar with it. You can get it at a Home Depot, any of those places. It's a powder that you mix with water. And once you put your your two pieces of masonite together where the seam is. Just run this down the crack, and it seeps into the masonite and adheres it together. So after years and years and years, once you sand it to make it very smooth, once it's dry, years later, it will not crack like it will, like maybe if you're just using joint compound. I've seen other people that if you're going to use the method where you turn it face down on your workbench and tape the seams to create a one piece, some people will just take poster board and they'll mount it to the poster board and then cut out along the top edge. And that seems to be a good method too. And then you can just put it in place and only just tack it a few places along the top on the back with two-sided dots of tape. There's a lot of different ways you can be creative with it. It's very flexible.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
Good luck, folks. And again, I just want to say it one more time. You got something special going there down in Louisville. And I met a lot of you. I've met guys like Bob Francrone at Nationals, Russ and Fred, and just wonderful people. You've got some wonderful layouts there. And I can't tell you about the hospitality, Bruce Sanders, when I was down, that just welcomed me into their home as family. And that's what model railroaders are. So you got something special, and I thank all you folks for that.
Well, I noticed that I think this week they already put the tickets for either Forecastle or Louder Than Life. So have you got your tickets yet for this year? Huh?
Well, you spilled the beans that I'm so haven't got the tickets yet, and not sure if I'm going to do that because there's about 4 or 5 different ones around. I've been to Louisville twice now for that one, and there's others around the country too. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, give us some heads up if you want to play trains while you're here again.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for your time today, Bill. We really appreciate it and enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bill. All right, friends. That's it. That's all we have for you today.
Bye.
Bye, Russell.